Once again, welcome, ladies and gentlemen. I do want to recognize our piper, Bob Roser. He went without an introduction before, but he did a great job for us. We appreciate that. Before we begin, though, I would just like to say a heartfelt thank you to everybody who has participated this weekend. The city of Fredericksburg, the reenactors, all the partners that have joined in, all of you who have participated. And I'd like to say a thank you to the best staff in the entire national park system. I'd also like to introduce those who will present this program: the Chamber Chorale of Fredericksburg, and John Baer, and readers Dr. Mike Stevens, Ashley Taylor, and Sue Henderson. We welcome again our honored guests. I want to recognize the representative of the Irish Ambassador to the United States, Mr. Ralph Victory. And we'd also like to thank the Color Guard of the Irish Defense Force. They certainly get the prize for coming from the furthest distance. Also, Mr. Jim Finucane, Deputy Mayor of Kerry County, Kerry, Ireland. And I'm told he was the impetus for the participation of the Irish Defense Forces here. We are also honored by the presence of Fredericksburg's Mayor, Mary Catherine Greenlaw, who came all the way up the hill with us. She's a descendant of several prominent families dating back to well before the Civil War. Also in the multitude here, we have at least 3 members of City Council: George Solly, Carrie Devine, and Matt Kelly. Now down to business. One note of caution for everyone: there will be a brief interlude of explosive fireworks like those down at the riverfront, and a salute from modern artillery, one of the descendant units of a regiment who fought here. Please do not be alarmed. If you do have hearing aids, you might want to turn them down at that time. Many of you have carried a flower to this place today, flowers representing those who fell at Fredericksburg. 1 in every 10 is red, symbolizing those who died. At the conclusion of today's program, we ask that you step forward and place your flower atop the stone wall. That small but immense barrier between men, Union and Confederate, that December day. The colors for today's program are presented by 2 National Guard units, both directly descended from regiments that fought at Fredericksburg. Coming along the Sunken Road from the south will be the colors of the 116th Brigade Combat Team, Virginia National Guard, descended from the 5th Virginia Infantry of the famed Stonewall Brigade. Coming along the Sunken Road from the north will be the colors of the 69th New York National Guard, the Fighting 69th, descended from the 69th New York Irish Brigade. Once foes on many battlefields, both of these units have recently been deployed in the global war on terrorism. Today, they will come together in a demonstration of national solidarity and an expression of honor to their forebears. Present the colors.
Shoulder! Arm!
50 years ago, on the centennial of the Civil War, the nation engaged in what it called a celebration. Today, the aura is different. We come together on this field of Fredericksburg, not to celebrate, but to remember. And we come not simply to remember, but to understand. Welcome.
The Civil War began for the North as a war to preserve the Union, and for the South as a war for independence. But in 1862, the Civil War found its bloody transformative rhythm and expanded purpose. By increments, it became something more than a war for Union or independence, something vastly more complicated, even controversial. On January 1st, 1863, President Abraham Lincoln was to issue the Emancipation Proclamation. The prospect outraged Southerners and caused deep schisms in the Northern populace. President Lincoln hoped that an increasingly divided, restless Northern public might be rallied by victory in the field. And so, at Lincoln's bidding, in the late fall of 1862, the Union Army came to Fredericksburg. 19 days before Lincoln signed the Emancipation Proclamation, armies north and south clashed on these fields.
In 1861, few would have imagined that what happened at Fredericksburg in December of 1862 could have happened at all. Though immense and profound, the War of 1861 seemed in some ways simple. A clash of armies that would resolve the great question of the United States or Confederate independence. A clash of armies that would fulfill or deny the pursuit of vastly different visions for a nation. In those early months, the fate of both sides seemed borne purely by the enthusiasm of peoples and nations newly at war. Listen to this song, so popular in the South early in the war, full of determination, aggression, and confidence.
We are a band of brothers and native to the soil, fighting for the property we gained by honest toil. And when our rights were threatened, the cry rose near and far, hurrah for the bonny blue flag that bears a single star. Hurrah, hurrah, for Southern rights, hurrah, hurrah for the bonny blue flag that bears a single star. As long as the Union was faithful to her trust, like friends and brethren, kind we were and just. But now when Northern treachery attempts our rights to bar, we hoist on high the bonny blue flag that bears a single star. Hurrah, hurrah, for Southern rights, hurrah, hurrah for the bonny blue flag that bears a single star. Do-do-do-do-do-do. Oh yes, I am a Southern girl and glory in the name, and boasted with a greater pride than glittering wealth or fame. We envy not the Northern girl, her robes of beauty rare, though diamonds grace her snowy neck and pearls bedeck her hair. Hurrah, hurrah, for the sunny South so dear, three cheers for the homespun dress the Southern ladies wear. The soldier is the lad for me, a brave heart I adore, and when the sunny South is free and fighting is no more, I'll choose me then a lover brave from out a gallant band. The soldier that I love the best shall have my heart and hand. Hurrah, hurrah, for the sunny South so dear, three cheers for the homespun dress the Southern ladies wear.
Songs of airy enthusiasm like the bonny blue flag would fade as the war progressed. Indeed, everything about the war had changed. The Civil War was a bloody process of change and revelation, a growing, painful exercise in understanding. Today, we still struggle to understand. It was a war whose outlay in life only intensified the commitment of those families, communities, and states that had offered up those lives until both sides, and especially the South, were willing to risk everything. No community in America suffered a harsher payback for going to war than did Fredericksburg. No place in America more vividly demonstrates how this war changed than Fredericksburg.
In 1861, civilians flocked to watch battle at Manassas. At Fredericksburg in November and December of 1862, civilians fled the approaching armies by the thousands. Fredericksburg schoolteacher Jane Beale described a group of refugees she found just beyond where the National Cemetery is today, just minutes after she had passed down this road.
Crowds of women and children had sought refuge in this sheltered spot, and as night drew on, they were in great distress. They could not return to the town, which was already in possession of the enemy, and they had fled too hastily to bring with them even the necessaries of life. Some few had stretched blue yarn counterpanes or pieces of old carpet over sticks, stuck in the ground, and the little ones were huddled together under these tents. The women were weeping, the children crying loudly. I saw one walking along with the baby in her arms, and another little one, not 3 years old, clinging to her dress and crying, "I want to go home." My heart ached for them.
The image of civilians cast into the countryside sped across the South as soldiers and newspaper correspondents described what they saw with a sense of disbelief.
Fredericksburg is almost depopulated. Wagons loaded with furniture pass our camp constantly. The women and children have been removed to the country. Where they find shelter from the wind and the rain, I cannot tell. But as far as I can learn, every farmhouse is filled to repletion. Virginia is truly unfortunate in being the theater upon which this monster war is enacted. My heart has been made to bleed freely when called to witness the sufferings of the weak and helpless inhabitants of this unfortunate country.
This flood of civilians was one of the largest flights of refugees of the war. It was the inevitable result of a war whose destructive tendrils now posed real threat to everyone in the Army's paths.
Fredericksburg was the first American town occupied by Americans to be bombarded by Americans. When Robert E. Lee decided to contest the Union crossing at Fredericksburg, he did so knowing that the Union Army would treat the town as a battlefield. On December 11, 1862, nearly 150 Union cannon opened fire on Fredericksburg. At first, they tried to drive the Confederate sharpshooters away from the river crossings. But once smoke and fire obscured their view of the town, the bombardment became general. At times, as many as 100 shells exploded over Fredericksburg each minute. Those residents who chose to remain in town huddled in their basements. A young girl on Sophia Street, just yards from the river, gathered in her basement with family and neighbors.
A shell went through our attic room, breaking bedsteads. One shot went through the parlor, 5 in all through the house. As they passed, the crash they made seemed to threaten instant death to all. It sounded as though the house was tumbling in and would bury us in the ruins. In the further corner, where the candle flickered and burned, a poor, half-witted woman crouched, hugging her knees as she rocked to and fro, exclaiming, "Oh, my son John! Oh, John! If I only knew where he was! Poor John!" On one side of the fireplace, a young man was seated upon a rude bench. His right elbow rested upon his knee and his cheek in the palm of his hand. His eyes were bent with a mournful gaze into the fire, and his hair stood on end.
The bombardment of Fredericksburg reflected a growing reach of the war's violence, extending literally into civilians' living rooms. And the Union's reaction to the bombardment revealed a growing bitterness that would carry the war into the even darker days of 1864. One soldier noted with some satisfaction that numerous secession families have been made to feel the awful horrors of war brought by their treason. A New Yorker wrote home in the middle of the bombardment, reflecting the sense that the war had broken the bounds that had once contained it.
At the present time, we're witnessing a splendid sight as the city of Fredericksburg is on fire. I call it beautiful because it is just the way that I wish to see our generals operate. But then I begin to think that they mean business.
Fredericksburg was the first American town looted by Americans. Union soldiers, fearful at the prospect of coming battle and full of resentment toward a town they saw as stubbornly, entirely secessionist, spontaneously vented themselves on the empty homes and stores of refugees. It was a milestone of the war, yet another reflection of intensifying bitterness, and soldiers on both sides knew it.
The wearied soldiers rested their tired frames on feather beds, ate their fat pork on costly china or silver plates, or if disposed, dined on jellies and pickled fruits, and for recreation read from the poets, bound in blue and gold. Hundreds and thousands of dollars worth of property were destroyed daily, and what was a short time since a wealthy city is now nothing but a poverty-stricken place. Do our friends cry out against this? So do we. It is wrong, essentially wrong, but it is war.
A Confederate officer noted simply in his diary, quote, "Town very much shattered, a monument to the barbarity of the abolitionists." Northern soldiers raged at Confederates for having shattered the Union. "The cursed rebels brought it all on themselves by their own maddened folly," wrote one soldier. In turn, Confederates railed at the Yankees for their destruction wrought on Virginia and on Fredericksburg. "The more I see and hear of them," said one man, "the more I do detest them."
Of all the war's battlefields, on none did soldiers more freely express their fears than Union troops did here at Fredericksburg. To the lowest private in the Army, the danger represented by these heights and this vast open plains Union soldiers would have to cross to reach them was obvious. One man looked across the river and mused, "Go we will, but not without apprehension. Those terrible heights before us are enough to terrify, but we will do our best." A Union officer wrote home on the eve of battle,
Tomorrow we commence the crossing of the Rappahannock and will be sure to have a fearful fight. In fact, I expect we will be licked, for we have allowed the Reds nearly 4 weeks to erect batteries, to slaughter us by thousands.
Think about this. These men recognized clearly the peril of what they were being asked to do, and yet they still came.
Nations fight for a purpose, principles, ideas, interests, a cause. Achieving a cause, be it the suppression of a rebellion, the reunification of a divided nation, freedom from slaves, defense of a home, or independence, is always a process of increments. And battles are the accumulation of 1,000 such small increments, small individual efforts, each its own story. Some are forgotten. A few end nobly, many end only with tragedy. Most have a victor and a vanquished. All of them, on this day, December 13, 1862, embodied immense struggle. Soldiers of the Civil War came to know that their efforts on a given day would not sweep away a rebellion or guarantee freedom or independence. Rather, they came to know, sometimes painfully, that all they could do was succeed in the one tiny increment assigned to them. On this field, their task often came from the wave of the general's arm or the bidding of a common lieutenant. Hold this ground. Take those heights. Sometime their assigned increment involved buying with blood and toil nothing more tangible than time. Time enough to allow others to do something more substantial.
For thousands of Union troops who struggled across these fields on December 13th, 1862, their increment, their assignment, their goal was these heights, and the road below packed with Confederate soldiers from Georgia and North Carolina and South Carolina. One Confederate artilleryman declared his cannon would cover the ground in front of the sunken road so thoroughly that not even a chicken could live on that field. It proved to be one of the most deadly places on any battlefield, swept by infantry fire from the road and artillery fire from the heights. How beautifully they came on, remembered an artilleryman on the heights, a huge serpent of blue and steel. We could see our shells bursting in their ranks, making great gaps, but on they came as though they would go straight through and over us. Listen to the blast of 100 shells, mindful that on that day, thousands flew over their heads into the Union soldiers struggling across that field.
The vast and spectacular panoramas of Fredericksburg quickly narrowed to the horrified, frightened faces of individual men struggling against fear, against death.
I noticed one of our recruits, a German who was literally unnerved by fear. His countenance was distorted by terror, and he was shaking in every limb. I think it was impossible for him to march. For myself, I confess that I never exerted more willpower to make my legs move in the right direction than just there. As I viewed the entrenched positions of the Confederates, I said to myself, we will fail to carry those heights.
For 7 hours, Union troops staggered across these fields. For 7 hours, Confederates in the road lined up in places 4 and 5 deep, passed loaded muskets to the front as fast as they could. Soldiers in the road, protected by the wall, fought in relative safety. Not so their officers. They saw their job, their increments, differently. To direct the fighting and inspire the men, officers needed to be seen. Of the 22 men who commanded regiments or brigades in the Sunken Road, 16 of them, including 3 generals, were killed or wounded in or near this road, 73%. The Confederates in the road fired into the tangled ribbons of blue sprawled across this now bloody plain. Allen Stratton's yard, Martha Stevens' garden, and the Fredericksburg Fairgrounds, now a wreck. They fired, said one man, until our shoulders were kicked blue from the muskets and were sore for many days. Darkness finally brought the killing to an end.
Those who say they would like to visit a battlefield seldom know what they are talking about. After darkness has put an end to the struggle, a hush settles over the field. Never is silence more oppressive. You hear the cries of the wounded. A stray shot hurtles through the darkness overhead. You hear the ambulance wheels grinding through the soil with a sullen, muffled sound like some monster crunching the bones of its victims. You see the outlines of forms gliding through the gloom, carrying on litters pale, bloody men. Or perhaps your friend, with his hair matted with blood over his white face and his dead eyes staring blindly up to the sky.
Of these battlefields, Union and Confederate soldiers recognized danger readily. And yet, though fearful, they acted usually without hesitation, committing with all their might, ready to give their lives for that fence line behind the Stratton House, or for this wall, this road, these heights, confident that even though they may not have understood why of their assignments, their commanders did. And so, men hurled themselves into places or attempted to do things that in retrospect seem insane or awe-inspiring, and sometimes both. They did so because they had faith that what they were being asked to contributed to a greater cause. A nation, communities, and families waited the results. Death at Fredericksburg reverberated across the land.
A note in the Camden, New Jersey Democrat, December 22nd, 1862. One of the saddest events to us connected with the Battle of Fredericksburg is the death of the Sergeant Major of the 15th New Jersey Regiment, John P. Fowler of Franklin Furnace. He was struck in the leg by a rifle ball and bled to death in less than 5 minutes. He was a large, powerful man, brave and generous to a fault. He leaves a widow and 9 children to mourn his loss.
Dear Cousin Sally, it is with feelings of sadness that I attempt to write you this evening, for I suppose ere this reaches you, you will have heard that Dick is no more. His left arm was badly shattered near the shoulder, and the arm amputated. He was buried on the farm of Captain John Alsop, 5 miles from Fredericksburg, within 200 yards of the railroad, under a small permission tree, near 2 other graves. His overcoat was left in charge of a Negro boy, with instructions to deliver it to anyone who should come after the body. I have been this precise, thinking you might probably sometime wish the body sent for. Cousin Sally, you will please accept our heartfelt sympathies in your sad bereavement. No one feels the loss more keenly than I do myself. My heart saddens at the pain and anguish this wicked war has caused. Your cousin, J.C. Allen, 13th Georgia. P.S. Those who attended the burial say the corpse was interred decently, in a coffin, much better than soldiers usually are.
Johnny comes marching home. When Johnny comes marching home again, hurrah, 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 marching boys marching. hallelujah. Oh, you had no arm and you had no leg. Aroo, aroo. You had no arm and you had no leg. Aroo, aroo. Oh, you had no arm and you had no leg. Your eyeless, boneless, chickenless egg. And you have to be put with a bowl to beg. Johnny, I hardly knew you. Hallelujah. With your guns and drums and drums and guns. Aroo, aroo. With your guns and drums and drums and guns. Aroo. With your guns and drums and drums and guns. The enemy nearly slew ya. Oh, my darling dear, you look so queer. Johnny, I hardly knew ya. They're hauling out the guns again. Aroo, aroo. They're hauling out the guns again. Aroo. They're hauling out the guns again. But they'll not take my sons again. 'Cause I think war is a terrible sin. Johnny, I'm swearing to you. With your guns and drums and drums and drums. Aroo, aroo. With your guns and drums and drums and drums. Aroo, aroo. With your guns and drums and drums and drums. The enemy never slew ya. But my darling dear, you look so queer. Johnny, I hardly knew ya.
Confederate victory, Union defeat, human disaster. Think of that moment after a catastrophe, a car crash, 9/11, while our vision is obscured by dust, or our ears engulfed in sound, or our nerves racked with pain, fear, and anger. Nothing is clear. That is the moment of wonder, of crisis. How bad is it? How will it affect me? Our nation? What does it mean? Before the smoke had cleared, while buildings still smoldered on Caroline Street, and before the Union dead that covered the fields in front of the Confederate line could be buried, local residents and Confederate soldiers returned to Fredericksburg. Matilda Hamilton visited her sister's home, the Sentry Box, on Lower Caroline Street.
We went to the sentry box first. It's a wreck, almost a heap of ruins. All the handsome furniture had been removed. A very dear mahogany one, and her bureau, also a very neat bookcase, and a good many pictures. The old clock, all were gone. Under Sister Charlotte's chamber window lay a dead Yankee, dead as he fell, for he was on his face. A party of our soldiers with perfect unconcern were laughing and eating in another part of the yard. I saw dead Yankees everywhere.
There is scarcely a house in the town that has not some mark of the battle. Chimneys knocked off, roofs torn up, walls scarred with holes of various sizes, some as large as a man's head, and others as large as a barrel. The streets are covered with broken glass, window shutters, and furniture of various descriptions. The large, tall houses suffered more than the low buildings. The large Baptist church has 15 large holes through its walls, 4 through the steeple, and the roof torn up in many places. I think there are 25 or 30 houses burned.
Southerners coalesced around the ordeal imposed on Fredericksburg. Across the South, the plight of the Fredericksburg sufferers inspired headlines and rage. The war hardly needed rancor to be added to the long list of emotions it evoked, but Fredericksburg inspired intense reaction. Writing even years later, local shopkeeper Edward Heineken could hardly contain his bitterness.
The few stores that did business were despoiled of their contents. Private houses, pianos were smashed, pictures wantonly ruined, clocks broken, books torn. But for all this loss, the residents considered themselves amply repaid when they viewed the thousands of the enemy's corpses upon the battlefield.
Civilians and soldiers from across the South donated more than $200,000 to aid the Fredericksburg sufferers, as they were called. It was one of the largest charitable relief efforts in American history up to that time.
The war changed. Leaders evolved. Soldiers and civilians on both sides learned to endure hardships unimagined in 1861. The long casualty list in newspapers from Bangor to Biloxi cast a pall over communities north and south. The lofty expressions of naive enthusiasm gave way to determination, tinged with lament. War imposed a weight upon this land like none we can imagine today.
Let us pause in life's pleasures and count its many tears, while we all sob sorrow with the poor. There's a song that will linger forever in our ears. Oh, hard times come again no more. 'Tis the song, the sigh of the weary. Hard times come again no more. Many days you have lingered around my cabin door. Oh, hard times come again no more. While we seek mirth and beauty and music light and gay, there are frail forms fainting at the door. Though their voices are silent, their pleading looks will say, oh, hard times come again no more. 'Tis the song, the sigh of the weary. Hard times come again no more. Many days you have lingered around my cabin door. Oh, hard times come again no more. There's a pale drooping maiden who toils her life away with a warm heart whose better days are o'er. Though her voice would be merry, 'tis sighing all the day. Oh, hard times come again no more. 'Tis the song, the sigh of the weary. Hard times come again no more. Many days you have lingered around my cabin door. Oh, hard times come again no more. 'Tis a sigh that is wafted across the troubled wave. 'Tis a wail that is heard upon the shore. 'Tis a dirge that is murmured around the lonely grave. Oh, hard times come again no more. 'Tis the song, the sigh of the weary. Hard times come again no more. Many days you have lingered around my cabin door. Oh, hard times come again no more. Oh, hard times come again no more.
There is a great sadness in an observation like this. For war, above all, as William McCarter said, is sad. But the measure of a moment in history is not just its sadness, but its meaning, what it tells us. The ultimate goal of things military is to render the ordeal so difficult that the other side is unwilling to suffer the loss, the sadness, the destruction, the struggle. Each battle during the war leveled a blow, even in victory, that staggered the nation's emotional core. The experience at Fredericksburg highlights a great irony of war. To a point, the suffering of a nation or a community only steels it further, commits it more deeply to the cause involved. Witness the British during the Blitz, or our own nation after 9/11. And so it was with the Confederacy following Fredericksburg. Southerners rejoiced at the victory at Fredericksburg. Robert E. Lee established himself and his army as the living embodiment of hope for the Confederate victory and independence.
But beyond a certain point of suffering, a nation can waver. And some in the Union wavered after Fredericksburg. One Union soldier wrote on New Year's Day, 1863, "Oh, my country, how my heart bleeds for your welfare. If this poor life of mine could save you, how willingly I would make the sacrifice." Debate raged over whether the Emancipation Proclamation was wise, was necessary, whether it would do anything other than further embitter the South. Disaffection with the Union war effort, Lincoln, his generals, and even in some circles the troops themselves, washed over the nation. These divisions, cultivated in the dark period that followed the disaster at Fredericksburg, threatened the Northern war effort and challenged the nation's commitment to the Union as it had been known for 46 years. Robert E. Lee knew well that in these divisions lay his greatest chance for Confederate triumph, to defeat the will of the North to continue.
Before the Battle of Fredericksburg, 43-year-old Walt Whitman had experienced war only from a distance, from his home in Brooklyn. He came to Fredericksburg in search of his wounded brother, whom he found safe. But Whitman remained, exploring the camps and hospitals, helping where he could, seeing war close for the first time. It was a revelation. He noted the abject lack of comfort for soldiers, the death and sickness, the marching and hard fighting and no success at that, and concluded that nothing we call trouble at home seems worth talking about. He could not have understood such things from his apartment in Brooklyn. One December day, Whitman took a walk in the Union camps in Stafford County, still gloomy with defeat. He wrote a note in a small notebook. "Sights at daybreak in camp in front of the hospital tent on stretcher. 3 dead men lying, each with a blanket spread over him. I lifted up one and looked at the young man's face, calm and yellow. 'Tis strange. Young man, I think this face of yours is the face of my dead Christ." To Whitman, the face, of course, represented the virtue and holiness of the cause, the nation, the sacrifice. Whitman later turned this passage into a poem. Whitman's "A Sight in Camp in the Daybreak Gray and Dim" is a testament to the immensity and profundity of war.
A sight in camp, in the daybreak gray and dim. As from my tent I emerge so early, sleepless. As slow I walk in the cool, fresh air, the path nearby the hospital tent. 3 forms I see on stretchers lying, brought out there untended, lying. Over each the blanket spread, ample brownish woolen blanket, gray and heavy blanket, folding, covering all. Curious, I halt and silent stand. Then, with light fingers, I from the face of the nearest, the first, just lift the blanket. Who are you, elderly man so gaunt and grim, with well-grayed hair and flesh all sunken about the eyes? Who are you, my dear comrade? Then to the second I step, and who are you, my darling and my child? Who are you, sweet boy with cheeks yet blooming? Then to the third, a face, nor child, nor old, very calm, as of beautiful yellow-white ivory. Young man, I think I know you. I think this face is the face of the Christ himself, dead and divine and brother of all. And here again he lies.
For Whitman, understanding the nature and intensity of the war also accorded it purpose. The revelation for Whitman lay in the massive effort and astounding courage and sacrifice displayed in the quest for nation, the quest for hope, effort expended against the backdrop of unspeakable sadness, hurt, destruction, and death. Bearing witness bound Whitman and thousands of others on both sides to the task. Compelled by what he saw at Fredericksburg, Whitman left behind his apartment in Brooklyn and spent much of the rest of the war caring for wounded soldiers in hospitals in Washington. His transformation demonstrates one of history's most important lessons. Those who understand best are usually the most committed. And so, we should all try to understand.
It is a reflex on a day such as this to reflect on loss, to mourn. But amidst the horror and the ugliness, there is invariably goodness too. Good Samaritans who crossed the stone wall to help wounded enemies. The quiet honor conveyed by Union soldiers returning the body of a Confederate captain who died in Union lines before his wife could reach him. And the bonds of soldiers facing struggle, sharing loss, investing their lives in an effort to serve, even save their nation, their people. Battle forges bonds more powerful than anything but family itself.
I went down the line of my regiment, fewer than half its men surviving, weary and dirty, their clothes torn and muddy, knapsacks rent, canteens battered, hands and faces daubed with muck and splotched with powder. There were pale faces and faces flushed, anxious and expectant faces, many that I had scanned 3 days before. The same, yet changed. There was something in the expression, the attitude of those men that awed me. An uprush of emotion blinded and choked me as I turned away.
On January 1st, 1863, Abraham Lincoln issued the Emancipation Proclamation, a document that signaled a fundamental change in our nation's relationship with slavery. After 86 years of sustained slavery, the nation now determined to abolish it. Beyond freedom was a revamped nation, a union redefined, the United States of America, the United States of America. There were challenges ahead, to be sure, but the United States, unburdened by slavery, emerged from the war as a nation ready to take its place as a world power.
Gathering here today, reflecting here today, reminds us that the creation of this great land has not been a straight and narrow path. We have meandered. We have sometimes indulged our fear and ignorance. We have argued. We have fought over competing visions for what we ought to be as a people. We have at times taken the more difficult course. We have, on occasion, simply failed. But the sum total of all that has been done and all that has been attempted is a great nation, forged by people in most ways just like us, who are willing to expend treasure, energy, and even their lives for, in the end, us, for the betterment of the land we now have the privilege to inhabit. From across our land, you have come here today to honor the immense efforts of those who helped to shape this nation and all its vibrant parts. But we do not do this merely as spectators. We do this as active participants in our nation's ongoing historic drama. We have heard much of deeds and courage today, and as we leave this place today, remember this. One of the things that made it possible for the men who trod these fields, Union and Confederate, to do what they did was their confidence that those who followed would not forget what they had done. That is the hope of every soldier. In 1862 in Fredericksburg, or in 2012 in Afghanistan, and all around the world. We are part of their drama. They are part of our fabric. And today, the two have come together. As one final act on this day, as we thank you all for coming, we thank our reenactment units who have come along. We especially thank the 69th, the 116th, the Irish Defense Force, and all of you for being here. As one final act, we ask that you all step forward and place your flowers and leave them in remembrance atop this stone wall. Thank you.